Hello there. This is Angelo John for the Sacred Inclusion Network podcast. I'm so delighted to introduce my guest, Jonathan Adams, also known as the Sonic Yogi. Let me tell you a little bit about Jonathan. Jonathan's got kind of two bios here. I don't mean two bios, but he's had two lives. He's had his pre-Sonic Yoga life and his post-Sonic Yoga life, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about both. Jonathan Adams started his career as a professional musician, recording albums for classical guitar with albums for Pomplin Intersound Records and his own label. He later co-founded the classical fusion group Montana Skies and toured with their group nationally as a performing artist for over a decade. And in 2012, Jonathan had let's call it an experience, which he'll tell us about. He was experiencing extreme anxiety, and as a professional musician, he knew the potential of music to entertain and move emotions. So following this experience, he discovered its power as a healing force. Since then, Jonathan has put his intention and focus into the exploration of the healing potential of music and has given talks and workshops on vibrational sound therapy at TEDx, the National Spiritual Living Conference, and other places. His vibrational sound therapy tracks can be streamed on Spotify, Pandora, SoundCloud, YouTube, and the Insight Timer app. If you have the Insight Timer app, please look for Jonathan Adams or Sonic Yoga. He's got a wonderful free introductory course that will... It's how I found Jonathan. And I'm so delighted that I took the course, and I'm so delighted that he's here. Jonathan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, Jonathan, I usually start out these things. Tell me a little bit about your background, spiritually and religious. Any way you want to take that question.
Sure. Well,
early days.
Okay, I'm going to take it from childhood on. So I grew up in South Carolina, very rural setting. Went to a Methodist church at the beginning of, as a young child. And then my parents kind of went on their own spiritual journey. I remember visiting other sort of churches after that Methodist church, things like Pentecostal churches and things where now looking back, I have the language for it, but things where sort of ecstatic states were happening.
Holy rollers, baby.
Exactly. And so I sort of was just kind of an observer to that. I didn't really necessarily feel like it was something I was all on board with, but I was along for the ride. And so that was kind of my first experience with that. And as I grew older, I sort of, I think, let all that go. I think I came to see a certain level of kind of, I don't know how you would say it, but I wasn't on board with it. And I just kind of let go of it and basically kind of discounted spirituality altogether.
Is that right?
So I would say I was more agnostic maybe for a while. I knew that there was some magic in the universe. I loved music, and I felt the magic through music. But as far as anything as organized religion would go, I wasn't interested at that point. Fast forward, I became a musician, went through college, started touring with this group, and was experiencing, stress as an adult, and as a musician, there's difficulties in that path of life, so the stress kind of just built up, and I knew I needed something to help with stress. I was having little panic attacks here and there. I was having some health issues from the stress, and so I was seeking things to help with that, and I found yoga at the local Gold's Gym.
Right.
And I just, they had these weekly classes. It
seems funny there'd be yoga at a Gold's Gym, but go ahead.
Yeah. And And I thought, I'm going to try that. So I did. And, I felt really good from it initially. I felt, sometimes I would even feel kind of high when I was leaving the class. So I did that for maybe 2 years. I was working on my health in other ways. And then I remember one night I thought, I need to meditate. And I did not know what meditation was other than the 5 minutes that we had at the end of our yoga class.
Right.
But I had this sort of energy coming up, and it was bringing a lot of anxiety into my mind. And I remember I wasn't able to sleep, so I went to the end of my bed one night, and I thought, I'm going to meditate. And so I started to meditate, and I felt, a little bit better. And that first night, that's basically all it was. And I went back to sleep. The next day, I had a similar experience with a lot of rapid thoughts, couldn't sleep. So I thought, I'm going to try this again. And I went to the end of my bed, and as I mentioned, I was having stress in my life and, various areas of my life, from career to relationships and on. And I went to the end of the bed, and I basically began to meditate just by breathing in and breathing out and focusing on my breath. And I remember saying to God, if you're real, I just want some peace. So if you could just hook me up with some peace, that's all I want. And I just kept focusing on my breath and breathing in and out, and really just kind of listening for that voice. And what I found was that all of the noise in my head of all the thoughts about, who I was, what I needed to accomplish in life to be somebody, all of these things that were really causing me a lot of torture mentally began to quiet down, and I could feel this silence that was back there. Mm. And so as I would breathe, I would get into that space, and it felt really good. And then I would take these little breaks, and as soon as I would notice the noise would come back. And so I would go back to the breath and sitting down, and long story short, I ended up doing this for probably about 4 hours.
Wow.
So basically meditated through the night. And what ended it was that as I was coming into this deep place, I had given myself a mantra along with the breath towards the end. And I was basically...
You gave yourself a mantra?
I did. I just remembered a scripture from when I was younger, and it was, be still and know that I am God.
Wow.
And so I just said that over and over to myself, be still and know, be still and know. And as I said it, it was like almost the words started to disappear, and it just became this unified sort of energy, and the thoughts of my mind started to really clear. And then I had this experience with realizing who I was, and I realized the John that had all of these stresses, the John who thought he needed to accomplish this and that, all of that was a fiction of my mind. Oh. And I realized that who I was not even who I thought I was, which it sounds weird to say, but it's a pretty jarring experience. So it was immediately blissful, and I felt connected to myself, the universe, and, all of those kind of cliche things that you hear people say. But it was like a lightning bolt. And then after that, this other voice came back and said, no, this can't be. And so my intellectual mind was starting to kind of come back and challenge that realization. And so the next several days, or up to a week, I really did not eat or sleep very much. And basically I kind of was I felt my energy had been put into a new place. Colors looked different, things felt different. And basically I was working through all the issues of my psyche, I guess my ego, you could say, and letting that go. So it was a sort of purging and cleansing experience. My physical body was releasing energy and my mind was releasing energy. And it was a very difficult experience. It was kind of like opening Pandora's box, so to speak. But towards the end of that experience, I was able to, with the help of divine help, to let go of all of that stress. And during that week, I had actually been, writing emails to people, and apologizing for the past. There were some past relationships that had stuck with me. I just didn't like how certain things had been left off. And so I called those people or wrote emails or whatever, however I could get in touch, and said, I didn't like how that interaction left off, and I wanted to, apologize or whatever it was. And so I remember towards the end of the week, one of those people that I had reached out to had actually emailed me back, and I was sitting on the couch after, really releasing a lot of energy is the best way I could say it. And I remember sitting there, and it felt like everything that I was seeing, the couch, the walls, all the parts of my mundane life were conscious, and they were kind of watching me as I was watching that. And all I can say is I felt the presence of the universe, or we have this word God, that is just a word that we can say for something we don't really understand. But I remember feeling that, and feeling that it was pure love, and that that love accepted me. And I realized that it was me that couldn't accept myself. And so in that angst, I remember actually, just kind of calling out in kind of the worst sort of fear that I could imagine, please help me, was the kind of thing. And all I remember from my childhood was Christ was this example of somebody that would have your back. And in that moment, I got this email from this person, and they wrote me a nice email, said that they had just gotten back from a vacation, blah, blah, blah. But they essentially said, feeling good about this moment is the most important thing. And that was like a message from beyond. And as soon as I heard that, I realized it just clicked. Now is the only time that exists. And all of this other stuff is just my mind getting outside of now. And as soon as I did that, my nervous system really relaxed, and I could feel this peacefulness. And then maybe a few minutes later, I would sort of drift, to the future or the past in my mind, and I would feel my nervous system immediately giving me feedback of, and so it taught me. I felt like I was almost training to stay in that present moment, and the feedback system of my body was helping me to feel that. Whereas before, I think we can get outside of being conscious of the body and just sort of
automatic
move through life that way.
Jonathan, this is all fascinating, and I want to return back to how you got into into the music, the Sonic Yoga thing. But I think this is like a wonderful time for an interlude, since we've been talking about all this heavy stuff.
Okay.
Just to play some music.
Great. I'm going to play a little bit of flute music here for you. So this is an F sharp Native American flute, which is for the heart chakra.
So how did you come into your mission?
So after that sort of...
Thank you for that. That was beautiful, by the way.
You're welcome.
Is the F sharp specifically a heart chakra? You mentioned heart chakra.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are various notes that people might assign to chakras. Sort of the most general, I guess, perspective is that it goes right along with a major scale.
Right.
So, C through C. In my particular set of bowls, I'm working with C sharp. And so in that scale, F sharp would fall on the heart chakra.
Okay, I interrupted you. So I do want to hear how you came into become the Sonic Yogi.
Okay.
And you had this transformational experience, but we haven't gotten to the full Sonic Yogi thing. So
sure,
enlighten me.
So that was the sort of my experience that was very profound, and then from that I was like, basically for the next weeks, months, years, I was trying to figure out what was going on.
How long did the whole transformation take?
Well, there was an intense period that was probably a week. And then I would say the next several months, I was really in a different space in terms of, I was just basically blissed out for the next several months. Right. And just kind of, going with the flow, the best I could. But, during that whole time, it felt like my mind had been open. So everything I thought I knew before, including who I thought I was, had been stripped away. And so I was open to new information. I felt almost like I was a child again, and I was retaking in life. During that time, music was key in helping me to relax and calm myself.
Right.
I started sort of humming tones that would help me to feel sort of a feeling of wellness, well-being. And then I started to listen to the Tibetan singing bowls because someone had mentioned those. I was listening to the music of Stephen Halpern at night.
Of course, yeah.
And
you're a little bit young for Stephen Halpern. It was back in my day, man.
Yeah, well, I found his music and I would listen to I forget which piece it was, but I would listen to it every single night as I would go to sleep, and it would just calm me. But I was realizing that not only that music was useful, but that just these frequencies could help to vibrate with our being and would help me come back to that place.
Explain what frequencies mean, because it means something very specific.
Sure. Well, frequency is a word for how frequently something happens, very simply. And so in music, a frequency is referring to the wave rhythm. So with a particular singing bowl, for example, I'm going to play a little C bowl here, C sharp. So that frequency is vibrating, at a certain rate, and that rate equals C sharp. So we can't hear the rhythms in that because it's so fast. We just hear a tone. But if we were to slow that down and down and down, eventually it would sound almost like a rhythm of a drum. And
really?
So it's easy to hear drums. We hear the boom, boom, boom of the drum. If we were to speed that up, it would eventually become a tone. And the same with any instrument, guitar. And so our body can respond to these frequencies. And what I felt was my body responding to different tones. Sometimes just humming a note would help to center me.
So you studied, basically. I mean, you learn these kind of things almost by yourself. It sounds like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This tone has a certain effect. This frequency has a certain effect. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yep, that's exactly right. And I basically was just being open to what I experienced, and then using my mind a little bit from that point to say, okay, I experienced this tone and I felt like this, and then trying to
so it's
take
like
notes.
The experience first, and then the sort of like looking analysis thing, mm-hmm. and eventually you fine tune it and you understand it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm still working on understanding, but yeah, I'm coming to a better place of understanding how that all works.
I know that in your the stuff I've read about you, and also I'll just ask you simply. So, sound can be used to calm people down. I guess it has therapeutic implications. Let's say, I know you're not a psychotherapist, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say I come to you and I say, Jonathan, I really need something to sort of calm me down. Mm-hmm. I mean, how would you go about that? Just maybe the person is a little bit familiar with music or something. I don't know. I'm just trying to get some sort of sense as to the real bottom line question is how to sound. How can one use sound as a sort of a calming device?
Well, I'm going to give you a few ways that can help. Sound, number one, it can help to calm our brain waves. So through a process called brainwave entrainment, we essentially have 4 different brainwave states, 4 main brainwave states, and they're beta, alpha, theta, and delta. And so you could look at those as being analogous to the EQ on your stereo. Each one has a frequency band. So beta would be more like the treble end of the EQ. Alpha and theta would be the mid-range, which are more meditative states. Delta would be the low end or the bass, which would be more of maybe a deep sleep state. Mm. And so I realized in retrospect that looking at my anxiety that I was in a high beta state. And so I was experiencing a lot of rapid thoughts. And this is well researched and cataloged that when you're in this state, you're going to experience that sort of rapid thoughts and a lot of mind chatter.
Is there a type of music that brings that on, let's say? I mean, like somebody's listening to, like, I don't know, dance music or something like that.
I don't know. I
can't do it that way.
I haven't looked at that necessarily. I don't think so. I mean, I think if we hear, I mean, obviously the military's looked into certain things where they can create psychological disturbance by playing certain types of music for long periods of time. But I think in general, that's more of a function of our psychological state when we get into that sort of rapid thought. But what I realized was that these Tibetan singing bowls could help the mind relax. And as I listened, it helped me to come into a more meditative state. And what I found was that my mind quieted, and also my body relaxed. So anybody that's had anxiety knows that, it's also your breath, your muscles can be tight. But this sound actually helped me to release. So that's number one thing that sound can do. Number two, listening to the Tibetan bowls, there's really no melody, harmony, or rhythm. So how our brain processes music, when we hear jazz or rock, our left brain is hearing the patterns of the music. So we're hearing that harmony, that rhythm, that melody, and all of those elements. Our left brain, which is sort of our pattern recognition software, is hearing the pattern of the frequencies, and it says, okay, that's rock, or that's jazz, or whatever it happens to be. With sound therapy, we don't really have that pattern, and so it allows that pattern recognition software of our mind to relax, and we're generally recognizing patterns all the time for our survival, and that's what we learn from the time we're children through adulthood, and that's how we get through the day in many ways. But that can also create stress. So when we can set aside time to release those patterns, it can help to release a layer of stress.
So, can you give me an example as to what that might look like with the bowls?
Sure. You want me to just play a bowl for you?
Sure.
Okay.
And you can explain what you're doing if you want.
Sure. I'm not able to play multiple bowls with my setups, so I'm going to pick one. And
okay.
But essentially, what I'm doing is playing the bowl with this, what we like to call an inviter. Thich Nhat Hanh is famous for calling this an inviter rather than a striker.
I didn't know that.
So I would just play several different bowls, and each of the bowls produce an oscillation. And so you can hear sort of a wah, wah, wah sound in there. And that's the rhythm that our mind tends to latch onto. And so we naturally follow that rhythm, and science has shown us that over time, when we follow those rhythms, it can help to change the rhythms in our body and our mind. So over a period of time, it helps the mind go from those beta states down into the alpha or theta state.
So, as you know, there's lots of religious contemplative traditions. And when I'm listening to you, and also you're using Tibetan bowls, I'm thinking of the Eastern tradition, and I'm also thinking of how they use chanting, or in the Western tradition, they'll use liturgical, what do you call these things? They'll use different kind of musical kinds of things. So I'm wondering, what is the use of sound for advanced states, I'll call them, look like in religious or spiritual traditions in your experience?
You mean using sounds to get into deeper states of meditation?
Or just as a help? I'm just wondering, how they use sound, I guess is what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
What does it look like? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. As I've been studying this over the years, it seems like nearly every culture, and many, if not all, of the religious traditions use some form of sound. This past summer, I had the opportunity to go to Peru and partake in some shamanic ceremonies and sort of see how that use of sound occurred. And they use basically percussion and rhythms along with songs to help guide the mind. And the first sort of brainwave entrainment used.
You need to explain that. I know what it's like because I read your stuff, but you said brainwave entrainment. Explain what that means, please.
Sure. Brainwave entrainment. Entrainment is a word that basically means to synchronize the mind. And so when we say brainwave entrainment, we're talking about taking our brain waves from that higher beta state and entraining them or synchronizing them with another rhythm. And so if my brainwave is in beta, but the rhythm of this bowl is in alpha or theta, then over time, what happens is the brain waves naturally are going to come down into that alpha or theta state. So that's essentially what the word brainwave entrainment is describing.
So it's sort of like if a bunch of monks are sitting around and, I don't know, there's an earthquake or something. It's not a very good example. When they go into the meditation hall and they start their chanting, whatever there is that they're doing, that's a form of brainwave entrainment to calm their mind. It's a crude analogy, but
sure, yeah. Basically, any meditation or kind of mind-body practice, the ultimate practice of it is to entrain our physiology to a different state. And so in a way, it's kind of, as a musician learns to play an instrument, the practitioner of a meditative art is learning to play their body and their mind. That's my interpretation.
That sounds like a good one. Brainwave entrainment. That's sort of I said it wrong. Brainwave entrainment?
Yep, entrainment. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there's something about rhythm and percussion as opposed to melody. There's kind of it seems like there's a crucial distinction there. I mean, if I'm listening to a bunch of melody, it's not the same kind of physiological effect on me than rhythms that repeat and things of that nature, and also that the sort of bass sound of the percussion. Am I making any sense?
Yeah, exactly. And I actually have a drum here that I can play a little bit for us. But the first brainwave entrainment was, of course, from drumming. And so in indigenous cultures around the world, we have drumming as a ceremonial act and dancing, and that's to help get the brain into a different place. And so a typical shamanic drumming rhythm is very steady, something like this. And so over a certain amount of time, basically this rhythm is at a specific frequency. And so we might have a rhythm like this along with some chanting or singing, but over time, that steady drum beat is going to help the brain waves come into a different place. And so the shamans can typically use those types of rhythms to help them get into a different state of being and, explore different parts of consciousness.
So what I want to ask you here is, about trance. I mean, I've seen people, mostly of African descent, as a result of something like procedure that you're just talking about, all of a sudden sort of go into trance. Is there anything you can say about that? Is this something you know about? Do you have any thoughts about it? Let's put it that way.
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, I would say that using any type of musical entrainment can help to get into those states. I've always just described it as being high, and that this could help you sort of feel in an altered state. In
a way, Jonathan, it sounds a little bit analogous to your awakening, I'll call it. So in other words, like you're living a certain kind of life, and help me here. This is maybe a off the wall metaphor. And let's say you go into a sort of a ceremony or something like that, and brainwave entrainment happens through drums or through any kind of ritual ceremonial rhythms. And there's something that happens, these kind of like frequencies, these ancient frequencies sort of take over. And this aspect of your smaller self, it's no longer there in a way, because you just become, it just sort of overtakes you. In other words, I don't know, I don't have the intelligence to say what it is that overtakes you, but something happens and you're not the same, let's say. And
Sure.
you can kind of like, what happens is that you may become actually divorced from that small self. And this larger thing sort of takes over.
Yeah, I agree. And, what I learned after the experience that I described in the beginning of the podcast is I looked into different religious practices and yoga and all of these things, is that, in my view, they were describing the same thing, which is that we tend to create this false self, which we could call an ego. But that false self, because it has a drive for existence and to develop a certain identity, it's constantly triggering our stress responses. And so when we can relax our mind and our body, or even use sound to entrain into a state of relaxation, the state of relaxation, in my view, naturally counteracts the state of stress of our false self. And the more I can relax and release those fears, release guilt, shame, all of those things that are not pleasant, the more I can connect to my true self, which is, connected to everything and has respect for everything and can live in harmony with everything. So yeah, I believe that maybe just relaxation and then using these tools to help us get there. And of course, there's a psychological component because we have to learn these lessons of our soul, so to speak. But those are lessons most of us have learned from the time we're young, which is just to have integrity, be honest,
Right.
have respect for other living beings, and it's really as simple as that. And ultimately, all of those fall under the heading of love. And so I feel that most all spiritual traditions have as their goal love. And I like to say, where love is the goal, there is no disagreement. And so, I decided that was my path. That's what I wanted to serve. So, really it's about helping to use tools to relax the body and the mind, and ultimately bring us back to that original state of love.
I at one point I was a member of a spiritual group, I'll call it, and it was interesting. I'll just tell you the story. So since I was young, I could hear a sound. I could hear a sound which is not tinnitus. I could hear an inner sound, and so I wanted to know what that was about. So when I found a group that claimed to have the keys to the sound current, I said, I've got to check this out. I don't want to, this is not my podcast, so I'm not going to go talk a lot about that experience. But the piece that I'm trying to get to is that when a lot of people think about spiritual states, let's say, they talk about light. They talk about the visual thing about light. Now, there's a distinction in my mind between light and sound. In my mind, and you can please correct me if you want, there's something that's deeper. The element of sound is, to some extent, it feels like more ancient. There's an element of participation in it. So if I'm hearing drums or something like that, I might want to get up and dance or something. If I'm looking at a beautiful painting, even a mandala, it's not going to have the same effect on me. And if I could do one more riff on this, because I'm talking too much, this is your podcast, Jonathan. There's an ethnic thing here too.
Mm-hmm.
because it seems to me, I used to study one book that was really influential for me. My development was a book called The Tarot by a guy named Mani Sadhu.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a course on the esoteric, the esoteric tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things he said in there, which just seemed very provocative, it seems very provocative in this politically correct time to say what I'm about to say now, is that every race has a particular sensory spiritual gift. So in other words, like the white race, of course, what does that mean? Because people are so mixed these days.
Mm-hmm.
There's his vision. Whereas the so-called black race, it's more sound.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, the distinction between sound and light, they're very interesting to me. I'll leave it at that.
Well, it's interesting that, sound is frequency.
Yeah.
And so our human hearing is typically between 20 hertz, which is very low. We can start to hear bass sounds around, 80 to 100 hertz, up to 20,000 hertz. And most of us don't quite hear all the way to 20,000. To put that in contrast, a dog might hear 3 times that much. They can hear up to 60,000 hertz. So now light, the frequency of light does not start until the trillions of hertz. So our hearing is in the thousands, and the frequency of light is in the trillions. Now there's a huge spectrum in between there that we don't have with our hearing or sight. So that kind of makes us ask the question, if what we think is reality is in these two spectrums, the thousands and the trillions, what's in all of these spectrums that are in between of frequency? I don't know the answer, but that's an interesting question. It's interesting too that our basic sense perceptions are basically frequency decoders. So our eyes are decoding light frequency.
Mm-hmm.
We see something, and then we decide what the pattern of that is. That's our left brain again. And then we have a perception of that. And the same with our ears. We hear the frequencies, then we decide what that pattern is, and then we formulate a perception. And so to me, that's just interesting in the way that our mind perceives. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times we develop a catalog of sort of stock perceptions that may not all be completely accurate. Mm. And so when we can sort of strip that away and maybe start from ground zero again, we can begin to analyze our perceptions in a slightly different way. So most of the cultures around the world that I've, kind of become aware of, I see that in the ceremonial aspects, and I guess shamanic, the yoga practices, all of the different sort of spiritual traditions are about perceiving something, because really what we're saying is that we're not necessarily perceiving life correctly, and it's causing us a lot of suffering, right? And so I see the commonality of all of that. Certainly as individuals, we each have different gifts and different ways of seeing that.
Jonathan, talk to me about sound and the chakras. And you should take just a moment to explain to people that may not know what the chakras are.
Mm-hmm. So after the experience I described, and then I described that my body was helping me to stay in the present moment. Mm-hmm. So I would feel that. Well, I started to feel these things in different areas of my body. And they were essentially feelings I was familiar with. Some of them not quite as much, but like at what I would call the root chakra, I would feel fear. So I would feel my adrenals and my kidneys sometimes working, and I would feel something at the base of my spine. I would feel, sexual feelings had sort of opened up, and so that was part of this awakening experience, was feeling that, and I would actually kind of feel that throughout my body. I would feel butterflies in my stomach, my heart opening, and just that sort of feeling. And then some of the feelings I was not as familiar with in my body, but I assume were there, was, my throat chakra, just being able to sort of speak my truth or even determine what it was, because there were times I needed to express different things. But then my crown chakra and my third eye chakra, I would feel this gentle pressure between the eyes. And it seemed to help me sort of cut through the BS and just see with a little more clarity, and calm my physiology while I was coming to a place of understanding about a particular relationship or circumstance or an issue. It just helped me to be calm. And so I felt that sound was sort of keeping me open and relaxed and tuned into these feelings in my body.
So is there any correspondence between, you talked about the chakras or the energy centers in the body, and particular sounds or frequencies, to your knowledge?
Well, I feel certain frequencies in certain places. I think there's a lot of debate about, what sound or frequency does what.
Right.
And, I don't think we're there in terms of prescribing
right.
sounds.
I'm going to give you here's a C sharp, man. That's all. That's going to cure your heart and your anxiety with all your emotions, and everything is going to be great. Just listen to C sharp for like a week. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah. But I did find certain sounds that would seem to affect like my third eye. This is one of them. So this is around like a B flat note. Along with an F sharp. So I found that if I hummed or just listened to that sound over time, I would feel that energy center sort of be activated. So I would collect the different bowls basically according to those feelings that I was noticing in my body, and also notice those feelings within my body would help me to understand my mind. If I was in an interaction, a conversation, and I felt something somewhere in my body, then I knew that it was my body basically instructing me about, this is what your subconscious thinks, because a physiological reaction is being triggered in response to this. So it's really seemed to be just about becoming more sensitive to my body and to my interactions in life. My feeling is that over time, I learned to stuff all of that down and basically kind of ignore those feelings. And sometimes just to get through the craziness of our lives, I think we sort of shut off our feeling. And
yeah, definitely.
And it's easier to shut it off in some ways, but then we can sort of lose contact with ourselves, and that's what happened in my case. And so really just allowing those feelings to flow and trying to stay in touch with what my body was telling me.
John, we could talk for hours and hours. I mean, I just feel like we're just like touching the surface here. But I would just like to maybe close with, you just play some music for us. You can either
Sure.
tell us what you're doing or not. I don't care.
Okay. I'm going to play this. This is a South American instrument that I got about a year ago, and this is called the charango. So it's related to the guitar, and which is my main instrument. It's the guitar, but I've learned a song on this. I'm going to just play you. This is just an original piece.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
John, I've got a weird request here because I just want to hear those bowls a little bit more. I'm wondering if you could do some bowls and we could maybe chant a little bit. I'm going to just join you. We'll just do a little freestyle here for a couple of minutes, and hopefully our listeners will they'll enjoy it as much as I'm sure we're going to enjoy it. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy it. I need some rhythm though, John. I need something.
Okay. Well, I can't do the drums and the bowls.
Start me out with the drums and then move to the bowls. Oh, wait a minute. The sound stopped. Okay. It was just faint.
Okay. Here, let me give it the mic over here a little bit.
Okay. Adams, the Sonic Yogi. You can learn more about his work by going to his website, sonicyogi.com, and he's going to do some bowls for the first little bit, or let's take us out. Hopefully I didn't pollute John's purity with my little contribution. We lost the sound of the other bowls. Something's happening with the sound. Here we go. So, as I said here, we've just scratched the surface. This is just the surface of Jonathan's just deep work. I really want to encourage you to go to his website. I'll put that in the show notes. It's sonicyogi.com. And oh man, I love that. I mean, I want to get me a set. I want to have me a set. I want to have you living in my house, man. So whenever I got anxiety, Jonathan.
There you go. Well, anytime.
We'll get something together in time. I do want to tell you about one thing. If you're really interested in Jonathan's work and you really want to hear more of it, Jonathan is going to be a host of our Sacred Inclusion Network. I don't remember the date. Do you, Jonathan? It's the third Saturday of February.
I thought we said the 15th of February.
Yeah, that's right. Let me just check real quick. Let's not give the people the wrong information. But anyway, I'm going to put it in the show notes. So we'll have the right. Here we go. February 15th. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Anywhere in the world, it's being over the Zoom platform. And, Jonathan will give us a deeper experience of what he's about if he wants, or maybe we'll just have a playful experience. We don't know because we're not there yet. So Jonathan, I'm going to give a formal goodbye to you in a minute. But I want to tell people about the Sacred Inclusion Network for a moment.
Sure.
As I said, you can get more information about the Sacred Inclusion Network by going to our website, sacredinclusion.com or diversityandspirituality.com. If you want to know more about us or you want to participate in what we're doing in a community of people that practice inclusion and all the challenges and delights of that, the simplest way to get involved is to go to our website. Go to our Facebook page. Just look for Sacred Inclusion. Do a search there. You know the Facebook routine. You ask to get in, I'll let you in. Another way, as we have these online community explorations on the third Saturday of every month at 11 o'clock EST. As I said, John is going to gracious enough to be our guest host. And if you really like the podcast, you want to support our work, you can do so on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can get extra behind-the-scenes content. And anyway, John, as I said, we just scratched the surface. I'm so delighted that you joined me today, and I hope we're going to be in touch forever. And I hope this is just the beginning. Thank you so very much.
Same here. Thanks very much.